I'll start and then I will let the audience participate. So in many of the programs, introducing what you described require change. And there is an old joke, how many faculty members does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is change. So would you like to tell us how you handle change?
Shall I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so first, that's indeed the biggest thing we have done because, the most conservative body in the world is the Catholic Church, and the second one is the institution of the university. And faculty are usually against change, even if it's in their benefit, because they always suspect there is something behind it, and sometimes they're right. So in our case, what actually happened was in 2012, that was what the New York Times called the year of the MOOC. And Sebastian Tran, who was then the CEO and founder of Udacity, came to see me and said, Zvi, let's do a master program for $1,000. Remember, then everything was free, so yeah. Cost and price didn't make, nobody thought about these things. And I told, I'm pretty good with numbers, especially with the dollar sign, so I told him $1,000 won't do, maybe $4. But our leadership said, 6, 7, so we listened to them, and actually they were right. They were a bit cautious, so we're making a little bit of money. With 4,000, probably we would have broken even. But then I decided I wanted to do it, but I'm only the dean. And cannot tell the faculty to do anything. So those of you who come from academia know that if you tell the faculty to do something, they will laugh you out of the room. So what I did was I created a task force of faculty, and I cheated a little bit because I already took some people that did MOOCs, and they were kind of inclined. But they really deliberated. We were at town hall meetings, and Sebastian came several times, and it took 6.5 months. Actually, after 4 months, AT&T already gave us $2 million, and they were amazed that with this, the faculty didn't immediately decided to do it. Why didn't we tell them to do it? They didn't understand that actually 6.5 months in academia is a minute.
Yeah.
But after 6.5 months, actually it was originated by, we have the first town hall, one of the faculty said, Zvi, we should have a vote. And President Aoun warned us against vote. Are you here? Never mind. So votes are dangerous. And I had to decide in real time, and I said, we will have a vote. And we had 6.5 months deliberation, and the faculty task force created a document specifying almost everything. And we had a vote, and something else surprising happened. 75% voted for it. So, and everybody, when I give the talk, and I don't give a 20-minute talk, I give an hour talk with half an hour questions, but that's what they want to do. How did you do this? So that's the story.
So I've always found that to implement a change, the best strategy is to have it come from the faculty and from faculty leaders. I mean, people who are highly respected by the faculty, so research leaders. That's not always easy, but in the case of the FIRE program, or FRI, it did come from faculty. And honestly, it came from faculty who were trying to get out of teaching. But
now you found the key to the kingdom.
Yeah, but we had a couple of faculty, one in chemistry, one in biology, who already had large numbers of undergraduates in their labs, and they wanted to get course credit for this. And somehow or other, we got a grant from Howard Hughes and then one from NSF, from the Division of Chemistry, and it morphed into the Freshman Research Initiative. And it was very beneficial to the faculty because they got real research done. I think in the first 5 years, we had 50 papers published with undergraduate freshmen or sophomores by then, names on them, but that was, so it was to the faculty's benefit. But the other thing is to have people like the research educators to make it easy for the faculty to do it, to use the faculty for what only they can do, and let others help with the logistics. And I think that's true for the INE Academy. I'm not so clear about PALS. That's an amazing organizational effort. 30 different courses, graduate, undergraduate courses, some just a few class sessions, some the whole class. I don't know, Keith, do you know how that? But anyway, I think in implementing change, big change, like a real paradigm shift in how faculty teach, you really need faculty leadership to lead the way, honestly. You can't do it from the top. It doesn't work.
Anybody else would like to comment?
I did it from the top.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, I designed a new top because I took an international advisory board from outsiders, like Moshe, who were well respected, since the faculty did not change for 26 years, so the structure. And this was, I think it was the right approach. So we changed content, we changed internal structure. I reduced the number of institutes from 7 to 4. I reshaped the research groups. Yeah, and the big change will still come in next 5 years. I think we are still at the beginning, and this was the message I gave. I say we should simplify now, because from a simple structure you can create new things, and because the new things they are still ahead of us.
I think the voice from outside helped, right? The advisory board making a recommendation, well respected, other than me, well respected advisory board, I think that helped.
So I'm just going to make one small comment. On PALS, by the way, it takes a tremendous amount of effort from people who are well plugged in to keep it going. It's a lot of sweat. But before I was a dean, I was in the federal government. And one of the things they taught us in the Federal Executive Institute was that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Right? And because it's, is that where it came from? Oh, that makes sense. And so we are in a crisis. And so
He was the chief of staff of Obama.
all I knew is I learned it from the Federal Executive Institute. They didn't credit it, unfortunately. But anyway, we are in a crisis. And I think I've seen faculty who are quite aware of that.
I think that's right. I think we're in a different era right now. Faculty are in general, I think, realizing that times are changing very dramatically in a variety of ways, and things like experiential learning have to become the norm. I think people have known this forever. I mean, there's a wonderful quote from Benjamin Franklin that's relevant here. It's, if I can remember it. Tell me and I forget, teach me, I remember, involve me, I learn. I think people, but nobody's been doing it. But now, I think in the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, I've seen faculty across the board really embrace it. And maybe it's because of a new building and all this stuff, but it's a snowballing thing. So I think that change, is underway. Others, there's all kinds of changes that faculty resist, but especially involving their money or anything like that. But
Joey, you want to comment on that?
Well, from my perspective, since we basically only deal with undergraduates, I think there's been a sort of a sea change in their expectations and what they will essentially put up with. Really, and faculty have really begun to adjust to that. I'm glad to see that we're over, and I used PowerPoint today for the first time in like 5 years. I'm glad that we're getting over the high tide of PowerPoint presentations, and I think a lot of that is from students.
Just to add to something that you said, that it has to be, at least in the US, to come from the bottom up. And actually a good academic leader, even if the idea is his main job is to fool the faculty and to think that it's theirs.
Years ago, we started a program at Texas in teacher training, STEM teacher training. And I thought it was going to be resisted dramatically. And Carl Weinman, Nobel laureate in physics, took a real leadership position in this. In fact, he's just got a book out, 6 months ago or something about this experiment that he undertook at 2 different universities in experiential learning in STEM teaching that is amazing and wonderful. And he came to the University of Texas a couple of times and talked about this. And I mean, when a Nobel laureate in physics is telling your physics faculty that they need to support physicists going into teaching, they listen in a different way than they ever would if I said it.
Vikram Adve, Computer Science at Illinois. I wanted to follow up on the MOOC discussion that Zvi talked about, because I think that there's tremendous potential there that is actually quite untapped right now, and I wanted to hear more about what you all think about it. MOOCs, there's a lot of resistance to MOOCs among traditional academics, but in fact, they really are a vehicle to reach people at scale. Yeah. And it has to be used in the right way. So I think that, for example, there are 2 opportunities that are almost entirely untapped right now. One of them is that, at least in the US and probably in other places, computer science in schools is becoming an important change. It's a trend that's coming on. Many schools are trying to add computer science in their curriculum, but in fact, teaching the teachers is a major bottleneck. There are just not enough trained teachers for this.
That's right.
And here we're talking about hundreds of thousands of schools, and so really many teachers need to be trained. And so one way it seems to me to reach that population is through something like MOOCs. And this is I think it's a very practical solution. I think it can be done. It needs funding because teachers need to be paid, unlike traditional students, to do this kind of thing. A second vehicle, which I think is not being explored right now, is the associate's degree or 2-year curriculum, vocational training, something that does the kind of either lifelong learning or training for a skill or something like that, where people can learn something in order to get a new job, to change their profession, and so on. But again, we're talking about a very large population of people. And so I think that is a place where universities certainly have not done almost anything and could really step up and make a real difference. I'm curious what you all think about that.
I really agree.
Because we did a MOOCs now for a MOOC for high schools, and they are really, the bottleneck is the administration, so we have to team up with the local city of Vienna. Yeah. So with them we can enter the high schools and we can deliver this. But it takes some, let's say the MOOC was the easier part, the interfacing was the hard part.
But in thinking about this question that I posed at the end, I mean, do we need to try to deliver an education in AI to all 40,000 students at the University of Maryland or something? I think this has to involve online. I can't imagine finding enough people to teach at that level even. So yeah, I agree with you, and we need to find our way through this so we can really. I was listening very closely to Zvi's presentation, thinking of what I could steal.
So I want to follow up on that question, because when MOOC first came, then people discovered that in the standard, the initial success rate was at around 5%. And then they said, okay, we have to do it in a particular setting. There was an experiment at San Jose State, was part of a course, so there was a MOOC and the local teacher. And then it did go up, but it was still something like 30%. So, and then Sebastian Thun basically declared this is not working. So what is the success rate of people completing the course that you are seeing, and what is the formula for making it work?
So I don't know exactly the details why it failed in San Jose State. I think most of the faculty pushed back. They see it as a threat, it's a disruption. They see it, it will go to in computer science, it's no problem because we don't have teachers. But somebody else in some other field say, I lose my job. Or not me, I have tenure, as you mentioned, but my students won't get jobs. So there is a pushback. We proved it can work also for the undergraduates. Now, it's not MOOC, it's MOOC-based. there are TAs, there are recitations. So for example, the on-campus course, the undergraduate, there are recitations, except that only 10% go to them. And in fact, I didn't have time to tell you the full talk, but in OMSCS and in the undergraduate, in some respects, not all, the course is better than face-to-face. So, for example, in the undergraduate, they do 4 times more programming on the screen than the students in class. So they are much better prepared afterwards. In OMSCS, they are computer professionals. They give their real-life experience. There is a course in education technologies. There are teachers there. There is a course in health informatics. There are physicians there. So courses even can be richer. Of course, face-to-face, but face-to-face when? In a class of 30. In a class of 300, only the first two rows are face-to-face.
So I'm struck by Patrick Johnson from the University of Wyoming. So I teach a first-year seminar as well as engineering computing classes. And I'm struck by the difference between the FIRE kind of concept and the MOOCs. The FIRE seems to be a very expensive endeavor, right? So you have a professor, you have a research associate, and you have 4 mentors for one class of 30.
We don't pay the undergraduates. They get credit for it.
They get credit for it, but cheap money. But still, it's still a much more expensive way of interacting with the students. I mean, a very effective way, but still, an expensive implementation.
We did an analysis of this at Texas with the freshman biology and chemistry labs, the canned labs, versus at Texas it was FRI. It was the same cost. We don't understand, I think, often how expensive it is to deliver those labs that don't work very well. But you're right, it's nothing like the low cost once you've produced the online video and whatever else you need and the tools and so on of delivering an online course to hundreds of or thousands of kids. You're right there. But I think the idea that this kind of hands-on research has to be more expensive is probably wrong. When you're trying to begin it and you have to buy a lot of equipment and renovate rooms and stuff, then you've got to invest in it. But once it's ongoing, I think it's probably possible to do it at about the same cost as the ineffective labs. So we need to understand.
By the way, online learning is not cheap. The MOOCs are not cheap, and when we started doing it, we now have like 30 courses, but a course costs about $300K. Now it's 170. We learn how to do it better, but it's not the fixed cost is really high. So they are not cheap either.
At Maryland, I'd say yes. We really are doing a lot of things in both venues, or both the face-to-face and online. It's interesting because we can compare outcomes and so on that way, and the online seems to be just as effective in most cases.
Indeed, just to add a little bit more to that, in my program, in my college, we also offer a Master's of Library and Information Science. And the archives track was not online, and we got tremendous pushback from students on that because our students are professionals scattered around. So we finally have created an online version of that program. It's just another mode of delivery.
What we will do in Vienna with the Center of Technique and Society is that we have one part of it is dedicated on online learning and learning, and one reason is that we want to share costs so that we can reuse the different courses across different organizations. So this is exactly one of the tasks, and to bring both online and offline learning together in different experimental settings there.
And we see it in flipped classrooms as well. But that's also a good way for many institutions to offload their costs to other institutions, for better or worse.
Flipped classroom was the hybrid model. Many, even if those are face-to-face classes, they use part online. And our OMS teachers, they give access to the tapes to the on-campus students. So it's becoming more integrated, but we have some distance to go.
Bobby Schnabel, Colorado. I'd like to get back to one of the points that Vikram brought up about community colleges. I realize that's not what's represented on the stage, but as we think about the big issue of this conference, which is preparing all of our learners for the upcoming times, I don't know if any of you from your partnerships with community colleges or otherwise have comments about what we've been discussing applies and how it applies to the community college world.
So this is only the start, but we started, Charles Isbell, as you know him, started a center called Constellation, where we want to reach community colleges, high schools, and to build a pipeline from underrepresented groups, so to computer science. So it's only a start, so I cannot make any grandiose claims.
In Maryland, the community colleges are connected by law in several ways with the four-year universities, and so we are obliged to take students from community colleges, and we have specific agreements with a variety of them. So it's about 40% of our undergraduates come to us from community colleges. So we're very involved with articulation of curriculum and this kind of things. We have specific transfer programs that work with them while they're in the community college to make sure they're taking the right things in order to move successfully directly into a major without, starting over again and things like that. Maryland as a state, I think, has been kind of engaged in trying to make this connection and use the community colleges as well as possible. That's a little bit different than the community college students who are really planning just for the associate's degree and to get workforce readiness and that sort of thing, which we have less to do with, I would say, but it is a big factor in what Maryland does.
The latter is really the separate issue.
Yeah, Shady Grove is we have something in Maryland that's really unusual. I think it took me a while when I first became provost to even understand it. They're called regional centers. The largest one is at Shady Grove, which is a little ways, 10 miles from College Park. Maryland's a small state, and you wouldn't think that we would need all these branch campuses and things like this. But regional centers are not exactly a branch campus. They're sort of a hoteling situation, very nice facilities where several of the University of Maryland colleges, universities, provide a program or several programs. So we have, I think, 9 different majors there that students can take, and they are actually University of Maryland students, but they don't take anything on the main campus. They only take from Shady Grove. And this is a 3rd and 4th year, and almost all of them come directly from community colleges, especially the one that's nearest there, the Montgomery College. So this is a really deep integration and articulation there. It's not without a lot of problems, honestly. In fact, I just wrote a long thing about how it needs to be changed, but it is an interesting connection, I think, really important to the state.
Hi, Carolyn Levander.
Or associate's degree, yeah.
For example, I think in Germany they have a very successful two-year program like that. I suspect in Australia we might have something like that. And I'm wondering whether A, you asked in Australia, and B, whether there's a role that four-year universities could play to do these kinds of more vocational two-year training for the many people who are not able to really go four-year degree, even at a lower cost program.
Yeah, we really haven't addressed that very much as a university, to my knowledge. I think you're right. That's an important need.
Yes, Carolyn Levander from Rice. I would be curious to hear how the different initiatives that you all have described today, how they fit within the kind of rising operational costs of universities, and any advice you might have to institutions who would, love to start some of these fantastic initiatives around the cost of them.
Yeah, it's difficult, and honestly, I mean, I just decided I was going to find some resources and put them towards fire at Maryland, and I was provost. I knew where the money was, some of it anyway. But yeah, to get it started, you really have to. Now at Texas, we had 2 grants, and that helped get it started. And after it was once established, it was a little bit easier to maintain it and grow it. But something like the PALS program, actually, the partnering city or county provides some of the funding. I provide some of the funding from the provost's office, and the colleges provide a little bit. So it's a kind of community effort to do that. And I think with the INE Academy, that was an investment made at the university level to start with. The president's office sort of mandated it, and it came out of the provost's office money. So that was an investment we decided to make. So you're right. I mean, you have to, it's not easy. You have to get make an investment from someplace.
You need an investment.
Yeah.
There is a startups cost, and we were lucky. AT&T gave us twice $2 million for MSCS. Later, a couple companies gave some money. The second OMS is in analytics at Georgia Tech, and they started. So eventually, both of them are sustainable. So it's the first investment. And you have to come up with it one way or another. And in fact, we returned the investment several times, though we didn't return the money to AT&T.
We have mixed experiences with that. For example, this exhibition we do in a public-private partnership, where part is done by the Faculty of Computer Science, part of the Technical University, and then we have some private funding as well. The 7 professorships are paid by the state. These are the bridging professors we have. This was an ongoing negotiation with the ministry, and at the end they were convinced that this is something where the Technical University should move somehow to integrate it around computer science. But this was an ongoing discussions we had with them. But this is the most expensive. Professors are very expensive.
So in our case, at least in OMSCS, it's not part of the faculty teaching load, but they are paid from the program, and it's pretty good. So we have enough, and many of them want to do it, and they don't have actually to be the instructor of record after the first time, after they produce the course. but many of them continue to do it.
With the FIRE program, I have high hopes that we'll get more corporate sponsors for research streams. The Capital One AI stream is an example where Capital One's very interested in hiring our AI graduates, as you might imagine. And this is a way for them to get in touch with them from the freshman year. They're sponsoring this FIRE experience, and they're probably going to add a couple more over the next several years. So maybe we can find some more examples where a sponsor would do that. With the ACES program, which we didn't have a chance to talk about, which is a cybersecurity program that was with Northrop Grumman, Dr. Aoun referred to that. Northrop Grumman gave us 2 very large gifts to get it started, and they have continued to support the program. So I think these kinds of things can't pay for all the bills, but they can help, and they can be a kind of an extra sparkle on things that get everybody excited and make things move and happen.
Hey, Justin Piccarelli, University of Wyoming. I teach mainly, pretty much exclusively hybrid courses, and I found they work really well for most of the time. But sometimes you have a couple troubled students, and you don't really have the reach that you need to get through to them. So I'd kind of like to hear from you about some of the challenges you've heard of folks facing in this online environment, and whether you think technology can actually bridge those gaps.
Well, I would like to hear from you. It sounds like you know more about it than I do. Others?
Zvi, would you like to comment on?
In the undergraduate course, actually the professor can get in real time data about how the students are doing. And he can identify few troubled students, and he actually reached out to them and sent the TAs to them and tried to help them.
We have a funny experience. Women behave better online than offline. This is a statistically significant result we have.
Isn't that always true?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. I'm trying
Sorry?
to be smart. Never mind.
Keep going. It was a joke.
Jim Caldwell from the University of Wyoming. I just wondered if maybe you might have some reaction or thoughts about, so President Aoun has presented a model where he says, okay, we need to teach technological literacy, data literacy, and human literacy is the third element.
I agree.
There. And I wonder, so is the problem solved? I mean, do you all feel like that's going to address this issue that we're facing, which is that, as I see it, and I think what's a likely future is that we may lose 30% of a lot of professional positions not that far down the road. I mean, lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, all the things our mothers wanted us to be when we grew up are going to be drastically, likely to be drastically shrunk in terms of the number of positions. What do we do for students? What do we tell them we're going to do for them?
That's what I meant when I started out. I think he's absolutely right. The question is, how do we deliver that? And we need to learn how to do that and learn how to pay for it.
I'm just going to make a small plug for iSchools.
There you go.
Yeah, there we are. Bobby probably knows what I'm talking about. So this isn't due to technology, but it's due to other things. iSchools started off being schools of library science, right? And as you may or may not know, librarians sort of got completely crunched, right? I don't think it's due to automation. I think it was due to other factors. But nonetheless, we continue to produce librarians, or we had to ride this out. And so what iSchools did is they created this nexus of technology and information and people. And those skills, when you look at the people graduating from our MLS programs, they are like the chief information officer of the city of Chicago, the head of social media at the United Nations, a reporter, journalist who just won the Pulitzer Prize at the Washington Post. Right? These people come out with an incredible set of skills. And some of them, yes, about 30% are librarians, but they're going off and doing astonishing things, creating their own careers. So is the problem solved? No, but I think the recipe is there.
Libraries now don't have books. I still, I admired what President Daoun is trying to do. I still don't see the leading universities doing it.
So
which I think is important, they will do it, but I don't see it.
Let me ask the last question. So when you look at, there are actually various voices you hear recently from Silicon Valley, that we need more people with humanities education, blah, 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 blah. The students clearly don't believe it. I mean, they are flocking to engineering, they're flocking to computing, anything they have to do is this. They don't buy anything that you study humanities. And I mean, if you look today what the job market wants, it's people with computing background. I mean, you see this, it's actually striking. Even engineering is not that much in demand, but it's all, anywhere you go, it's about computing, computing, computing. And so somehow I see a gap between this is what the market wants now and what we are told, no, you must produce people that have technology and humanics and what have you. Now, I think it would be good for society if we had a computing student with more understanding of human society. But this will be good for us. It's not necessarily clear that this is what the job market wants.
I'm a strong believer in the humanity, not because of my experience, but because I spent 25 years at Columbia. They have the core curriculum. Even the engineers and the computer scientists, they have to take significant part in the great books, which I strongly believe, and actually our alumni from engineering, I was Dean of Engineering there, appreciated much, much more than what they learned in mechanical engineering that was totally useless 10 years later. So I strongly believe in it, and in Georgia Tech, the amount of humanity is much, much smaller, but I'm not in power to change it. I believe general education is important. In Europe, they get it, a lot of it in high school. Unfortunately, in the US, we don't.
At the National Science Foundation, 1/2 of all the careers are going to IIS, right, which is the division that deals with people. Right, so it's true that we need people who have definite technical skills, but we're building all this technology for people. And if we don't design the technology to work with people, it's going to be at best worthless, at best.
No, I said, I think for society we need such students.
Well,
I just don't know that the marketplace right now is consistent with that.
Fair enough, Moshe, but I mean, Intel, for example, has a whole set of human factors people, Intel, right? And as well as economists and sociologists, because they realize that they have to design the Intel base for people. So I think, while certainly there is a gold rush right now going on in terms of learning AI techniques, I think there's a longer term thing that involves people. That's my sense.
I foresee the future of this Lego-based educational system, where you have some basic blocks from different disciplines and you can aggregate it. I think in there you will have humanities in, and then you will have other disciplines. But I think this is something where we are hunting for. I think we are not there yet, but there, for example, I think the University of Tel Aviv or Haifa is doing something similar, where there you have to concentrate in each discipline what is the core of it, what are the principles of it, and then you can engineer around those different ways through this Lego building. And I think we are going into this direction. I think online learning will help to that. It will also guide you with respect to some principles. But I think in 5 to 10 years, Maryland will do it. Maybe Georgia also.
Joey, any last comment from the liberal art perspective?
Well, I think it's really just flexibility and creativity. I don't think I would let current market trends, employer trends, drive where you want to go over the next 40 or 50 years. It's not in their best interest to be pulling in that direction, certainly. And beyond that, ultimately, there's a self-fulfillment part of it. And I'm not going to argue for the humanities. I could, but I think in general, I see Students at our college major in biology because they want to be field biologists for the government because they want to be outside all the time. And they want to do science, but they don't want to do lab science, and they don't want to do advanced degrees. So there's a part of it that's going along with human fulfillment that we have to be aware of as well.
Okay, let's thank this panel.
Jim will tell us about the
Yes.
So I'm a huge